Though not everyone agrees on why the Earth's population is a problem, most can agree on this simple fact. Today's population growth, if unchecked, will have massive detrimental effects for billions of people and other living creatures. Now the question is, how do we solve it? Meaning, what would it take to cap off the Earth's population at a safe level before overpopulation spreads all the way across the globe? One term that is critical for this question in population science is fertility rate. Fertility rate is the average number of kids the typical family in a certain area produces. Fertility rates combine with death rates, or how fast the citizens are dying off, to make the overall population growth rate. What many population control methods come down to is bringing the fertility rate down to replacement rate, where kids are being born at just the right rate to replace their parents in the next generation. The worldwide replacement rate is 2.3 births per family, while in developed nations it is 2.1. If an entire population starts abiding by its given replacement rate, the population will grow or shrink depending on its present fertility rate, then stabilize a generation afterward. Why is this helpful? If you know approximately the number of people in a nation, it brings great accuracy to balancing resources among citizens and monitoring other statistics. Additionally, this number is very helpful for job markets and the economy in general. Since the population is stable, there is no surplus of workers left jobless or tons of positions unfilled. However, the biggest reason of all for keeping at replacement rate is stopping population growth without sacrificing adequate care for the previous generations. If fertility rates drop below replacement values, there's suddenly an entire generation of citizens without enough people to take care of them in their old age. Which brings us to solution number 1, government-imposed family planning. One of the main proposed solutions to the population problem is having the government set limits on how many kids any family can have. In this situation, the government will give benefits or penalties to families depending on whether they keep under the child limit. The strength of this method is its built-in incentive for curbing population growth. However, several negative consequences arise, such as forced family planning, inadequate elder care, potential imbalance of the sexes, and undermining of people's human rights and values. All of these strengths and weaknesses were on full display while China's one-child policy was in use. Solution number 1 in action: China's one-child policy. Starting in 1980, the Chinese government disallowed families from having more than one child. After seeing their population explode in the first half of the century, China endured a widespread starvation known as the Great Famine, where an estimated 30 million people perished from 1958 to 1961. Some say this famine directly caused the one-child policy, since China's new agricultural system put in by Mao Zedong could not sustain the incredible amount of people living in the nation. Though this undoubtedly influenced the policy, there is also evidence that China wanted to replicate Western population science. Many scientists overseas saw overpopulation as extremely detrimental, and in an effort to replicate this cutting-edge scientific theory, China put the one-child policy into use in 1980. This lasted for 35 years, and since 2015, China has mandated a two-child policy for its citizens. By some accounts, this method did work. China is poised to have its population start decreasing in 2030, then level off at 30% lower than the peak in the following decades. Unfortunately, the societal consequences that followed show this measure was too drastic and prematurely developed for China as a whole. In the last 3 decades of the one-child policy, many of the things that could go wrong have. For one, like mentioned earlier, one child per family is an entire value below replacement rate. As the years went on, China's topsy-turvy age balance put far too much stress on single-children families, as parents would have to care for not only their child, but their aging parents and in-laws. This issue is often called the 4-2-1 problem. Another issue that has arisen in recent times is China's surplus of men. Since the policy took hold, families would sometimes abort or commit infanticide for female babies, since men were culturally desirable and they only had one chance to have someone carry the family name. As such, there are now 119 boys per 100 girls by census statistics, and a predicted 30 million Chinese men who will never find wives. Finally, millions of children growing up with no siblings has created cases of little emperor syndrome, where many members of recent Chinese generations exhibit poor social skills, feel entitled, and are risk averse. Ultimately, In the biggest example of government-instituted population control, the short-term detriments create a tough case against the long-term benefit of lowered population. Solution number 2, education and contraception. An alternative population control method is increasing access to birth control as well as emphasizing women's education. By ensuring girls have decent education of their own bodies, plenty of job opportunities, and affordable, available contraceptive methods, fertility rates will be brought down while standards of living for families and communities rise. One of the greatest examples of how much these easy changes can transform the face of a country is the case of Mauritius. Solution number 2 in action, 1960s Mauritius. In the 1960s, local elimination of malaria, along with better health care, brought down death rates sharply while birth rates stayed constant. Mauritius quickly became one of the most densely populated countries in the world, with 600 people per square kilometer, density 1/3 higher than India and 4 times higher than China. Seeing their nation quickly filling out, Mauritius took action. Instead of just emphasizing available contraceptives or regulating birth rate entirely like China, Mauritius focused on education. They made school free in 1976, which eased the choice of families for sending their sons and daughters to school or work. Mauritius saw a 60% fertility rate drop from 1965 to 1980, and a 75% decline from 1965 to 2010. Benefits included national development to a middle-income economy and ranking first in economic competitiveness among Africa's countries, all while stabilizing the population in quite a short time.
Overall, the main issues with overpopulation is that it will threaten the availability of natural resources like water, increase consumption of natural resources which leads to pollution and waste, and cause political tensions to increase over access to these natural resources. The best solution is to promote women's education while also making contraceptives more available. This allows people to make their own decisions while also bringing down the global fertility rate.